Welcome, Zellah, and thank you for joining the UCT Alumni conversation today. Zellah, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you very much, Sianne. Thank you for having me. My name is Zellah Fuphe. I am a UCT alumni. I graduated many, many moons ago. I currently work in corporate South Africa. I am responsible for corporate governance, but my true and real passion is governance and ethics.
Wonderful.
And I'm based in Johannesburg.
Fantastic. Lovely to have you with us today. Zellah, the Alumni Action Program, it's a clarion call for participation. What is it all about?
This is an initiative that is aimed at the UCT community, and it is a broad community initiative, and it is aimed at providing mental health support to survivors of gender-based violence. It is aimed at students, and we are hoping at the beginning of the program to have mental health support for 25 survivors and being provided 8 sessions.
That sounds fantastic. And Zellah, this is such a timely program. The Alumni Action Project arrives at a time when there has been a marked increase in gender-based violence incidences reported nationally, really, including those reported at UCT, staff and students experiencing violence off campus. Zellah, why do you think mental health support for survivors of gender-based violence is so important?
Sianne, we live in a country where women and children are not safe. They're not safe in their space, in every space that they occupy, at home, at school, at university. They could be in Texas, and they experience this on a daily basis. And I think for me, as a South African woman in particular, this is an issue that is close to my heart. It has always been. And, you know, we've seen these cases being reported over the years. But the one case that really, really touched me was the case of Uyinene Mkhwejana. And I'll tell you why. I was spending some time with one of my closest friends, Zanele Nyoga, when she got a WhatsApp video call from her daughter, Sanda Nyoga, who is a UCT student. This was about 4 or 5 days after Uyinene had disappeared and she hadn't been found yet. And Sanda was completely distraught. She was sobbing. She was inconsolable, really. And, you know, she was scared. She was concerned for Uyinene. She was concerned for her own safety and the safety of other students on campus. And of course, we know what happened. You know, a few days after that, Uyinene was found. And I had several conversations with Sanda. And I just could not comfort her. She was concerned, and that hit me really, really hard. I think the rape and the murder itself was difficult enough, but to see how somebody who was in the same space as Uyinene, who actually has the same belt as her, they were acquaintances, and how difficult it was for her. And I thought that, you know, if it's difficult for people who are not directly impacted, how much more difficult it is for survivors of this, who may not actually have the support that they require. So for me, the two go together. You know, if we're not able to help stop gender-based violence in this country, which clearly we've not been able to do to this day, the cases keep getting reported. I do think that we have a responsibility, a moral responsibility even, to provide the necessary support for those that have survived gender-based violence. So that's why I think this initiative is very important.
Thanks, Zellah, and thanks for sharing that personal story with us. Over and above the personal inspiration to take action, you have also personally sponsored the first 25 psychological sessions for survivors. And through your engagement, the Mauberger Foundation has pledged a further 20 sessions for survivors, which ensures that this program is sustained for 45 survivors, which is a total of over 360 sessions. And I think that's a phenomenal achievement in such a short space of time. You've shared that gender-based violence survivors require dedicated resources over a long period of time to help rebuild their agency and their capacity so that they can move through life and move through their career trajectories. Why have you embarked on this project at UCT, Zellah?
Okay. First of all, I'm an alumni, as I said. Secondly, because of what I've just shared, and primarily because of Sanda. I also have, my goddaughter is also a student at UCT. Her name is Thandi Legash. And I felt I wanted to do something that was personal. It didn't depend on anybody else. It depended on me and how I felt. And I felt that this is something that I needed to do. I also have to say that without Sanda and without her mother encouraging me to do this, because it took me about 13 months of agonizing about this and trying to think about what it is that I can do. And one September evening last year, I came up with this idea. The first person I shared it with was Zanele, Sanda's mother, and the second person was Sanda, who was very enthusiastic, actually helped start the ball rolling in the discussions I subsequently had with UCT, and she continues to be a member of the project team. So for me, it's something that is important because it is a community thing. It speaks to our humanity. It speaks to, we don't leave anybody behind. It speaks to us seeing somebody in need and saying, what is it that I can do as an individual, and who are the people who can be part of my tribe to actually make this happen. So if you look at some of the research that's been done, Safer Spaces published an article a few years ago, which says that 12 to 13% of students are afraid to walk around campus at night. And this is more so for female students than it is for male students. The South African Human Sciences Research Council also published a study which they conducted, I think, between the years 2013 and 2017, where they actually say that students report, mental care issues, trauma related to gender-based violence. You also have to consider the fact that UCT is embarking on diversity and inclusion, and you have a very important part of that. And if you look at the incidence, the dropout rates for African and colored students in particular, it's markedly higher than it is for white and Indian students. And having been a student at UCT myself, and yes, of course, this was decades ago, I know how dislocated I felt. I was fortunate to have a very good bursary and also worked, part-time. So I was able to access whatever I needed as a student. I also had medical aid. So if I needed medical care of any nature, I was able to access that. Now, if you consider all of that and you think about students who come from underprivileged backgrounds, who do not have the financial means, who do not have medical aid, and they happen to be victims and survivors of gender-based violence, and they do not have the help that they require, that is beyond what the university is able to provide. That's why this is important for me. There are also economic consequences to gender-based violence. KPMG published a report which said that the impact of gender-based violence on this country's economy can go up to 1.3% of GDP. Now, if you use last year's figures, GDP figures, that's about 80 billion rand. Let's just stop and think about that. That is 80 billion rand. But more importantly, there's a human aspect to this. There are people in pain who may struggle to finish their degrees, who may have to postpone their graduation because they have to take leave of absence. They may have problems with interpersonal relationships. And sometimes even after they graduate, those problems actually persist beyond their university years. And I think the other thing that we probably don't talk about enough is the impact of unresolved trauma on families, on generations of families, because unresolved trauma has intergenerational impacts. And I think if you take all of that together, I do not see how we do not do this as a community.
Thanks, Zellah. And certainly that's what makes this project so special, is the fact that there's an intergenerational aspect to the inspiration behind this project, but also that you're bringing together an entire tribe to respond to this call. And that's an extremely powerful motion. Zellah, how can other alumni become involved in this project?
As I said, this is about community. It's about humanity. It's about the alumni of UCT living up to the values of UCT. So my call to anybody that is viewing this video is, if you are a psychologist that has trained in the disciplines that we are looking for, please sign up. Please sign up to provide services to the survivors that we are targeting. And for the rest of us alumni, please contribute financially to help provide this assistance to more survivors. We currently are sitting at 45, and we're guaranteeing up to 8 sessions for those 45 survivors. We'd like that number to be more. And if you can, please contribute. And I think for me, this call goes out to students as well, because ultimately, this is us as a community supporting students, and we'd like students to actually take this on as their own. One, by talking about it, encouraging survivors to utilize the facilities at UCT, which will then enable them to access this help, but also to contribute. Whatever you can contribute as a student financially, please do so. But I think for me, the other issue here, and I think, I've said this to you, Sianne, for me, this project is for everybody. I say it's any alumni, any community, anywhere in the world. So it can be replicated because of its simplicity. And I think even if people don't contribute to this particular initiative, my call to everybody is, if you know of somebody who's a survivor of gender-based violence and needs mental health support, please assist them to access that help.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Zellah. Thank you for joining us today and for leading UCT alum into action, so that survivors of gender-based violence can have an opportunity to rebuild their own agency and resilience and deal with this trauma and heal. Thank you, Zellah.
Thank you very much, Sianne. And I'd like to thank UCT for partnering with Sunday and I on this, as well as you for being our project manager, quote unquote, as well as the colleagues that are on the project team and the other ones that are working behind the scenes to make this a reality. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Zellah. Go well.
Gender-based violence affects any alumni, any community, anywhere in the world. UCT alum, here is your call to action. If you are a qualified psychologist in South Africa, please register to support survivors. Alternatively, you could please sponsor sessions for survivors so that they can access psychological services. Your participation will enable a survivor's academic success and healing.